Wake up, buyer payer people. It's a beautiful day. Go grab yourself another cup of joe and say hello to Jim and Michelle Rhodes on the Buy Here Pay Here morning show. Take it away, you two.
Good morning from Clearwater, Florida. I'm Jim Rhodes. I'm here without my lovely wife, Michelle. She might pop in and join at some point today, but we've got special guests today. I marked them as guest hosts, but we don't have another guest, so I suppose they're just guests today. We've got Amanda and Hugo Sanchez standing by, and so looking forward to bringing them into the conversation. Just wanted to give a special shout out to our Wednesday guest on White Hat Wednesday, Jonathan Hargy from Texas joined. And if you missed that broadcast, I would definitely recommend you make time to check that out. That is some really good information about how to connect with the Hispanic market in most any community in the U.S. Some of us think they're not there, but in reality, most of the markets that we visit, there are Hispanic customers in pretty good count. So be sure and find that episode. Also want to make sure to remind folks to get to BHPH Nation. Check that out. That's something that we have out there as a kind of a landing page currently. You can pre-register. We're working on the nation. And so look forward to have a couple things in mind to talk to Amanda and Hugo about on that subject. But let me just bring them in. Stand by. We'll get Amanda and Hugo in there. So I think I've got you in there now. Amanda and Hugo Sanchez from Houston, Texas. Welcome.
Good morning, Jim. Can you hear me?
Gotcha.
Hey, good morning. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, of course. Glad to have you guys join in here. We got, I hope you don't mind, Amanda, when I put the post out there, I called you Amanda Bleepity-bleep.
I've been called worse.
Yeah, I get it. Most people who know you know that you do sometimes choose colorful language, which we all appreciate. It's the way we know and love you.
Yes. It's I'm just a passionate person is what it is.
Yeah. Well, and some words are more descriptive and appropriate, right? They're just more meaningful.
Right. Exactly.
Right. So that's kind of why you choose those, I'm sure. And we just haven't really spent enough time with Hugo. For all I know, Hugo does the same.
I'm the censor button of the relationship.
Got it. I joke. I don't even have a bleep button on my side. So really but yeah, thrilled to have you guys stop in. Michelle and I were fortunate enough to have time to stop into your office. That was great to see your place. You got such a cool spot in Kingwood, Texas. And yeah, it's a great community where you guys are.
It's a lot of fun. We really like this area. Great place to live. Absolutely.
Yeah. And of course, I know you. Some of our listeners are outside these Facebook groups and might not have had a chance to meet you guys. And before you started, I want to remind our listeners, if you're listening in this morning, please let us know what state you're listening from. I see folks are starting to learn that we like to hear that. I got Ohio, Texas, Florida, North Carolina listening so far this morning. So thanks for that. If you're listening in, please let us know kind of where you're hearing us. And I want to make sure that folks know, because outside these Facebook groups, there are a couple of private Facebook groups for Buy Here Pay Here that, we all, most of us spend a lot of time in. And so those who are in there know that, your firm, Butler-Sanchez, it really specializes in Buy Here Pay Here, related finance company, accounting. You guys are sure experts and really consultants in the space more than just CPAs. Is that fair?
Yeah, I would say that's fair to say.
Yeah, we see you guys are clearly going in a direction where we meet a lot of dealers out there who are using their local CPA. We hear, and we're not trying to. We always tell them, look, we're not CPAs and we're not attorneys. When Michelle and I travel and do our consulting thing, we're operations specialists, but having owned a dealership myself and which included a related finance company years ago, I have some understanding of accounting, and I hear dealers talking about some of the things that they do. And I'm not trying to be their CPA or advising it, but I have to say, you probably want to talk to your CPA on that, or find another CPA, because I'm not sure that what you're doing is right, when in fact I am sure.
Right.
In fact, a quick example would be, we meet a lot of dealers who are doing loss reserves on their account and thinking that that replaces an RFC. So that's one example. You guys probably run into that too, right?
Yes, I see that quite a bit too. Yeah, I'm actually just taking a client on who's doing that right now, or whose CPA was doing that, and I want to say it's about a $600,000 adjustment that we're having to make to his tax
Mm,
returns.
yes.
And of course, I've seen people carrying a larger reserve and thinking it's deductible, and
Yeah.
yeah, we see those kinds of things all the time.
Yeah, and that's unfortunate because, like I say, those things can be expensive. We talk about on the operational side that there are mistakes that new people can make in this space on the operational side that can be very costly, and certainly on the accounting, it's like, wow, we see them, uh, make some pretty critical mistakes, and software regrettably doesn't help us as much as we'd like in some of these areas, and so we watch that and say, it's an opportunity for us to find. We just need to find an expert. I mean, and you guys are among the people who know this space, that RFC thing frontwards and backwards. So we know that it's important to get, a specialist involved, sooner than later, just because they're just, we don't want to have those conversations with an auditor, and have to write a big check. So I think that's an important thing for people to understand. Why don't you guys tell me, Amanda, did you start the Facebook group, the boardroom? I know you started that. You want to share a little bit about how that came to be?
Um, yeah, so it's and Jim, you know me, so you'll know what I mean when I'm saying that. I initially started the group because I wanted to be able to reach those dealers who maybe aren't with an industry CPA yet, or are just starting out and don't know the complexity of buy here pay here accounting and tax rules. I wanted to find a way to reach them before they come to me and tell me that they've got $1 million tax problem. Right. I thought, man,
Mhm.
let me try to get ahead of this issue and prepare people and just put the information out there. I'm having these calls every day with people. I have the same conversation with dealers every day. Might as well do it in front of a camera and post it and put the information out there and reach more people.
And that's how kind of Wisdom Wednesdays within the group came to be, and the content that was created for it is, it was just, hey, what are the phone calls we're having over and over? What are the questions that we're answering over and over? What are the topics we're covering? And that's just kind of how the Wisdom Wednesdays videos started for the
Yeah.
group.
Yeah. And you guys have been very generous in that. We see a lot of great stuff over there, which I got to say, I know, Hugo, you recently appeared on the Independent Dealer podcast with Luke and Jeff, and I would invite our listeners to find their way to that episode. I bet if you just looked up Hugo Sanchez in their podcast track, that you'd find that one. You guys talked about some really important things over on that episode as well. So we just know there's just a ton of stuff, and you guys are so good about sharing. We also know you're super busy because there's a lot of dealers out there, needing help. You guys just wrapped up your extension deadline yesterday, right?
That's correct. We got one more, October 17th, for personal returns, but yesterday was a big day for us.
So October 18th, you'll be in the Bahamas, or is that the idea?
I'll actually be flying. I will be in the Bahamas, and I'm flying home on the 17th. So
What?
all returns have to get done by October 13th in our office.
Nice. I just always thought most of the CPAs I've worked with over the years, they try to vacation after those deadlines.
Yeah.
It's a brutal.
No. Yeah, I'm going right before the deadline for a wedding, so it just happened to fall that way.
Oh wow! So it's total random joke, and that's actually where you're going. So
Yep.
and that brings up. I know that dealers out there need help, but Michelle and I are so frustrated that we haven't had any clients reach out to us from Hawaii. Do you guys have any clients? Don't you feel like? And I see Brett Buick. Good morning, Brett, from California this morning. He's at the LHPH conference. Wish I could be there with you guys, but I don't see Hawaii chiming in, and I feel like. Don't you? Hawaii's got to need some accounting help.
Yeah, they do. They do. We're in addition to buy here, pay here, we dabble in a couple other industries, such as things that our friends are doing. So Hugo's best friend is a hairstylist. He and his wife both, and they own a salon in Maui. And so we have to go visit those clients every now and then.
Oh yeah, no, of course. Yeah, some of that stuff is just best done on site.
Exactly. They're very high maintenance clients. They require
Yeah,
a lot of our
of
attention,
course.
and you know,
They
Yeah.
never pay their invoices though.
Oh, that's unfortunate. Well, surely you can write that off somehow. It's getting there, but yeah, so that's fun. I jokingly have also told clients when they reach out to us from Minnesota, yeah, we're happy to come visit. We need to schedule that between June and August, kind of the same deal. So let's talk a little bit more about the this matter of accounting for buy here, pay here. And keep in mind, I'm doing a lot of work on my side with these DMS providers, and I'm not going to name any names, but I got to tell you, I was on a client meeting yesterday, virtual meeting with a client, and we were digging in because we're setting up their performance reports. And we determined that the software simply did not generate all the numbers that we would need to reconcile their principal. And so just to be clear, when I'm talking about principal, what I'm doing on my side from an operational standpoint is we're trying to identify an opening balance for principal on a given range of time. Typically, we're looking at that number on a monthly basis. So I'm going to take you through this. We'll break this down a little bit because I think our listeners need to really understand the importance of what's happening here. I just want to see what was the opening principal balance on what I call the primary portfolio. Some DMS providers call it that, like whatever the buy here, pay here portfolio of principal
Right.
balance on the active contracts, right? And then I want to add in across a range, new principal added from new contracts. I want to subtract the principal that was charged off, the principal that was collected, and sometimes there's a write down category that's separate from, charge offs. And so I'm really just trying to opening balance, add the new stuff, subtract, what's left the portfolio and principal, and I want to have that balance pretty closely.
Right.
Ideally, I should balance to the penny. I mean, that's a really important number. And for my standpoint, from an operational standpoint, the reason I want to see that is because we're using that for performance reports to do what I call conversion rates, which is the rate at which the portfolio converts principal to cash. Of course, we're looking at the other numbers, interest and fees and this and that also comes in. But first, I'm just trying to make sure. And for me, the reason I need that is I just want to make sure that the report that I'm sending to the client is pretty accurate. You guys need accurate numbers from an accounting standpoint, but I'm a little irritated. A couple of years ago, I recorded some videos out there and got attention from people just saying, I'm a little frustrated with the DMS providers that they don't take better care of our dealers out there. I'm just trying to be a voice for dealers and say, we got to get better on the DMS side, getting these dollars balanced out. You guys run into that?
Yeah, and I think part of it is so. I do a receivables roll forward every engagement that I work on, every period of financial statements that I do, for the same reason. I want to make sure that I'm relying heavily on the DMS to tell me what's what. So I want to make sure that from a big picture standpoint, the reports that I have, what I'm looking at makes sense. But I think a lot of the trouble is that not every dealer does things the same way. So there are times when I see principal, but it includes, CPI, or I see principal and it's net of the discount, the intercompany discount between, the dealership and finance company. There are also times when you see, a repo ACV applied as a principal payment.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you're reducing in your roll forward, if you're reducing the balance for your principal charge offs and your principal collections, you might double dip on that repo ACV. And so I think that that's part of the challenge, that every dealer does things a little bit differently. And, this isn't like it's kind of like I tell people, if you're thinking about a retail dealer and you think about the transactions that happen with their receivables, they originate a deal, they book a contract in transit, and then it gets funded, and then it's over. That's it.
Mm-hmm. Right.
With buy here, pay here, it's a lot more complicated. We're booking a
Mm.
receivable. We're going to take payments on it over 48 months, etc. It's going to earn interest that whole time. We might have some repossessions come in. We're going to sell it to our finance company at a discount and amortize that discount. There's a whole lot more going on with the buy here, pay here transaction. And I think that's also one of the reasons it makes the accounting integrations and things like that very complicated. It's just so high volume. high volume transactions in there. And so, yeah, we run into that quite a bit. And, it's always one of the first things I do when I work on somebody is a new client is I try to figure out, okay, what does principal really mean on this report? How are they booking this? How are they booking that? And I have to do that before I can even mess with their accounting, just figure out kind of the way that they're using their DMS.
Yeah. So, when I set out to do that with a new client, we're trying on a monthly basis. I'm trying to just I can't obviously, just like you guys can't avoid or can't justify cranking out a lot of time, chasing after small numbers. And so I'm targeting plus or minus 1%, but 1% on a $20 million portfolio is a big number. So to leave
Yeah,
that
it is. It is.
unidentified is just unfortunate. And like I say, it just strikes me as it's my primary asset. If I'm a dealer, that's my primary asset in my business. My the receivables that sit on my balance sheet for most of our dealers, that's the biggest number. And so, and we're doing it probably like you guys are asked to do it. You probably do some consolidated financial statements. We're doing
Yes.
our performance reports typically on a global basis. We're just kind of bringing the dealership and the RFC together, and we're just looking at
Right.
because we're just looking at portfolio performance primarily and cash flow. So we're just trying to see, okay, how's the business performing? How's that portfolio that's so important? How's it performing? How's it doing in terms of converting to cash? And so we watch those numbers and we chart them, for our clients month over month. And so it just frustrates me that's so difficult. And I've asked, like, if I'm a DMS provider, that should be a simple report to, run that thing for the month of August. And it gives me the opening balance and all those, the movement, I call it principal activity. It's the, principal moving in and out of that portfolio. And there's the closing balance and there's all the numbers. So it baffles me that, a business like ours, that we don't have that kind of solution. And I hope they'll reach out. I mean, I think you would be happy to help. I would be happy to help. There are others who would be happy to help sort that out. And I feel like if they were, spend enough time in dealerships and enough time in, this business, inside the operational side of it, they would recognize that this is something that's really needed. And it's kind of, to me, it's the first thing that I'd be looking for in a DMS. And so we're also hearing some horror stories out there. And again, we won't name names about providers, but I would just ask our listeners that if you're on a DMS, a little birdie recently told me that some DMS providers, if you should make the decision to move from one provider to another, that your current provider where your data resides is not releasing transactional history on your
Yes,
customers.
I've heard that too. I've run into that as well.
Yeah. And so I just think, I won't name the name. I'm just saying, if you're a dealer, you might want to be asking that question of your DMS provider right now before, and even though you don't plan to make a move, it's kind of been in my experience, and I've been around this business now for 20 years. And when I first started 22 years ago, I was working with a consulting training company that was also a DMS provider. Back in those days, they were just starting from the move from DOS to Windows. So that's how old I am. But basically back then, we had that, it's been my observation watching the DMS providers that pretty much there's been a understanding that, they'll migrate. I'm hearing some that, do charge, and it's in the language. I'm sure when they sign up, it says if you do migrate away, that you might pay a fee. And so, if it's in the contract and we can make that judgment going in, that's one thing. But to withhold data when we're trying to make a switch because we're not happy with the product or we've outgrown it, that to me is crossing a line. And so I think we're ask our dealers out there, ask your DMS provider, if I should make a move, where does this data go? And so how much of the data is mine to move? And so that's problematic and kind of a whole different tangent, but it's just,
Right.
it's something that affects me and you and your clients and my clients. It's just something that we want to be watchful of. And
Right. And to add to that, I would encourage dealers to, to talk to other dealers and share those horror stories. I think it's, I see this from DMS providers, which is, catastrophic when you can't get that data. I see the same thing happening. There are some CPAs who don't want to give up the prior year information, or want to make a transition very difficult. I see it with reinsurance providers and lenders, and I see this often where they make it, instead of coming together to work with other vendors in the industry to make things better for dealers, they want to make it very difficult to transition. They want to make it as hard as possible to transition. And it's, to me, it's kind of embarrassing. If I think like, man, imagine if that's what you have keeping your client with you, is that you've got their data hostage.
Right.
Imagine if that's what you had to do to keep clients interested in you. I mean, I think that it's embarrassing and it's shameful. And I would encourage dealers to share. And while I won't name names either, I would recommend dealers talk to each other and share that information,
Yeah.
because it really is I'm trying not to get colorful here, but it really is a pain in the bleep when you run into a situation like that.
Yeah.
And it's just harmful to the dealer, right? So what favor does the vendor think they're doing the dealer when they treat them like that? It's a bad look.
Yeah. And if only we had a format where we could go live and talk about those kind of things and start to spread the word amongst dealers, wouldn't that be helpful?
Right.
Right.
Maybe like a one place everybody could go to share information and rate vendors
Yeah, that's a great idea. She's obviously putting in a little pre-plug for what we're doing on the BHPH initiative, because one of the things we're doing there is we're creating a curated dealer-only discussion group. And so what I mean by curated is we're gonna actually vet the dealers and make sure that the people that are in that conversation are in fact dealer principals. And so that lets us talk freely about some of these kind of things where, it's challenging to obviously in a Facebook group to talk about things like pay plans and maybe even DMS providers or, other providers to be able to talk. So we just want to create an environment where dealers can speak freely. But I was mostly referring to like a live morning broadcast where we could reach out to dealers, that I feel like would be helpful to spread the word to dealers that and again, I don't mean to come to any of this, except from a spirit of cooperation in the interest of, having the dealers benefit. We're just trying to use our voice to try to, spread the message and try to solve some of these things. And I totally am trying to bring a spirit of cooperation to this. If they would call, I'd be happy to try to help, specify the kind of reports that I think are beneficial to dealers. They just don't call me. I don't hear from them. And so I could, and some of this is obviously for our benefit because we're trying to make sure that we can capture the essential numbers. But I have to believe if in fact I can succeed in getting the DMS providers to create this simple report, then it's got to benefit you guys on the accounting side of what you're doing as well.
Oh, for sure, for sure. And I think, I've reached out to a few of the DMS providers on some of those things, and there are certain ones who are much more open to discussion than others. There are some where buy here pay here is just kind of almost like a side thing that they do, and others where buy here pay here is their bread and butter. And so I think, there's more benefit working with those who's, have buy here pay here as their bread and butter when we're trying to get certain things built. But I agree with you. And I think that there is a lot of room for improvement. And I think that, it really just depends on which DMS provider you're with, how open they are to, working through those things.
Absolutely. So I got a couple more things I hope we can get kind of discussed before we wrap up here. One is that I look forward to working with you guys and your firm and anybody else out there who wants to, contribute to this conversation around. I'm working all the time to try to get the work that I do from an operational standpoint and this work that we do on performance reports. I'm trying to get that to intersect with the financials that, a firm like you might produce so that, I find that it's challenging. You guys, you can do this stuff in your sleep, but the typical dealer, especially new dealers, it's challenging for them to understand their financials in a way that they can look at that and really understand what's happening in their business and
right.
so I look forward to continue, because there always seems to be some level of disconnect. We work with folks like you, but I got to say, even as a former dealer who I jokingly have said I learned more doggone finance company accounting than I ever wanted to know when I was a dealer, but I got the hang of it, and I learned how to get the right stuff from the software. But I still found it challenging sometimes to make the connection between what I was seeing in the financials, because I jokingly would say, and I still kind of share this with dealers, like, at the end of the day, those financials, that P&L report is really, in a way, is meant to help the IRS know how much tax I owe,
Yes,
what kind of check I need to write to the Treasury. So, and
correct.
that's
Absolutely.
needed for that purpose, but it doesn't always help me to know how my business is really performing, because obviously in Buy Here Pay Here, we have this whole, profit is forthcoming, and we're taxed on profit that's yet uncollected. And so I think there's always this challenge of trying to figure out, okay, how can I read my financials and know exactly, how my business is doing? And I know you guys do a lot of work on that. We're over here trying to help, dealers connect the operational reports to that, and they can see their portfolio performance. And obviously from our standpoint, we focus a lot on cash flow, but we can't ignore the profitability, because it hits our cash flow, just like the
Right.
client
Of course.
that's
Of course.
got a large adjustment they're making on their financials, and that's obviously going to have a huge cash impact. And so, yeah, we see that as well. And so I just think it's one of the things that we want to be watchful of. And then I know this is a whole separate subject. And I know it's been a big subject on Facebook after we had a dealer, and I won't mention names, but they were very generous in sharing about how they discovered, I think with your help, an internal theft or embezzlement problem. And we don't want to get into specifics, because I think like you guys, I don't like to share anything specifically about how employees steal, because we don't want to, educate the next employee, who would be, an opportunistic, thief in some of those situations. But because that happened, like in some of the stuff we're talking about, reconciling principal and reconciling some of these things there, we just see that there's mismanagement sometimes. Sometimes it's just simple mismanagement that shows up in working through these things, but obviously sometimes it's outright theft and embezzlement. So obviously you guys are seeing some of that, right?
Yeah, and actually we see that all the time. The reality is, and I hate to say it, this was kind of a culture shock for me whenever I came into when I started my career. But the reality is that when there's an opportunity, most people are going to take it.
Right.
And I mean, the first time I saw a fraud, I was shocked. Oh, I can't believe this person did that. The next time I was shocked, and then by that third time, I'm like, okay,
Mhm.
what they said in school is true, that where the opportunities there, they're going to take it. And then with Buy Here Pay Here, it's even, this is just a high, we handle a lot of cash. We have significant receivables that the employees are touching in the DMS. We've got
Mhm.
significant inventory that employees have access to. And so, the risk for fraud is even heightened because we have so many high risk factors there. And so, yeah,
Right.
it's very common. And I would say that, I would even go so far to say that if there is an opportunity there, your employees are stealing from you.
Yeah.
If there's an opportunity for them to steal, it's happening.
Yeah.
And so it is very common. I think dealers maybe don't realize how common it is. And so that's kind of one of the, when I talk to somebody about these internal controls, I have a little, guidelines. Hey, are you doing this? Are you doing this? Who does what?
Sure.
And just them filling out that kind of checklist, I immediately, all right, here's what we need to look at, and here's what we need to change. And so it's yeah, it is disheartening, and I hate to say it like that, because it is a little bit depressing, but it is the reality that where there's cash, there's theft.
Yeah, it's true. And, by the way, I can make sure that people know we've seen theft that's not cash. Like, and I have also seen dealers say, well, I balance my books, routinely. Some of the theft that we've seen, the books would still balance. And so
Correct.
it's
Most of
important
the
to
theft
understand.
I see, the books still
Yeah.
balance.
Yeah. So it's like, at the end of the day, I always say we hire people that are bright, but we also end up with people who they have pressures and stresses in their life. And sometimes when there's an opportunity to, grab some funds and relieve some of their own personal stress, they're gonna take advantage. And so that's just a reality. So we have to plug those holes. And so I know you guys are out there working that just like we are. We see too much of it, and we're always trying to take measures to help our dealers protect themselves from some of those things. So I know you guys are fighting that fight as well. So we probably should wrap up. We could obviously talk about this stuff all day. I'm grateful for you guys making time. I put on the screen there. You can find Butler and Sanchez LLC in Kingwood, Texas. Your domain is on the screen there, butler-sanchez.com. Is that right?
That's right.
You can find you. I'm just going to tell you right now, you reach out to Amanda and Hugo. They're very busy. They're probably going to have a hard time fitting in very many new clients, but I know they're kind of suffering growing pains like Michelle and I are with growing our company. And so they're going to do the best they can to take care of folks. And so you just, you reach out to them there. And again, I appreciate you guys making time to join, and we'll just keep spreading the word on behalf of dealers and see what we can do to get these DMS providers to help us out a little bit.
Right. And I'll say too that, reach out, even if we're not able to take on, too many clients, too many additional clients. I have a lot of, I know all of the industry CPAs and all of the folks who are good at buy here, pay here. And I'm pretty good at helping dealers find the right fit for them if it isn't me.
Yes.
So reach out and I can help anybody out on that front.
That's great. I know you do that. We do the same. I know you refer people. And I got to say, Amanda, as a consultant, she is somebody who, even if they can't do your books and you want to bring her in as a consultant advisor, Hugo, same. You guys, if you need help, want another set of eyes on your books, she's one of the quickest I know to look through financials and like I say, Hugo as well, to be able to spot a problem. So just if she can't take on the actual accounting, they may be able to serve as a consultant advisor for you as well. So again, Amanda, Hugo, thank you so much for tuning in. I'm going to wrap it up here. And so I'm going to remove you guys from the broadcast, and we'll say goodbye to our listeners, and and then we'll check in again with you soon.
Thank you, Jim.
Thanks for having us.
You bet. Of course. So again, thanks for listening in. Michelle didn't get the chance to join us today. She's traveling and off to a little family time. And so we'll have her back soon. But in the meantime, thanks to our guests. And as I said, you can find, I know Amanda's got an article, which I believe you can find if you're not a member of the BHPH Boardroom Success, or there's BHPH Success Group, there's the BHPH Boardroom, which are both buy here, pay here specific private groups on Facebook. So if you're hearing us over on LinkedIn or YouTube and you're not a part of those groups, you might want to get in there. There's a lot of wonderful discussion, that happens over there. So we would definitely invite you to find time to get in there. And so in the meantime, thanks for joining us. We'll be back Monday at 9 a.m. Eastern.